Hi, this is Jo Treggiari, formerly of Dogday Records, In-A-Minute Records, Music People, and many more adventures. Checking out HipHopSlam.
So Joe, you and your partner Chris Graham had Dogday Records back in the day for many years. From '94 it was formed, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now originally the first artist was 11.5, right?
Yeah, Fiend for the Funk.
And that one, it really did blow up, didn't it?
It did blow up. We used to joke that UPS was our distributor because we sold direct to all the mom and pops, and we even sold direct to Warehouse Records. It was I think the only time they ever bought direct from a label was that record.
So they kind of blew out of nowhere. They were associated in a way with RBL because they were from a similar part of the city.
Hunters Point.
So how did you first hear about 11.5?
Through TC, who was the producer in Hunters Point and had worked with everybody, and we were good friends, and so he basically put together a group for us to be our first release.
Right.
And we knew Tony Jackson, and he was down with all the Totally Insane and RBL and.
Was it Fogtown Management? Was
yeah,
this?
Fogtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
So that one came out, blew up all across the country, and then the next release was what? Was it U.D.I?
U.D.I, yeah. Under the Influence. And they were also from the neighborhood, the Hunters Point neighborhood, not our neighborhood. And and that did really well too. TC had a big hand in that. I mean, his production was just amazing.
Yeah.
I think he really knew how to get a hook in there. And it was all about the hooks, right? Like Browsin and Tennis Skirts. Those were like both singles off of those albums. And they had Garcia Vega. I mean, they were like sing-along choruses. And I mean, that's what blew RBL up, right? Because if Bammer hadn't had such a great hook, like such a great chorus.
In the SFC.
Yeah.
And speaking of choruses, 5150, who you also put out music by, they had pretty good choruses too, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought their sample choices were really smart and hooky. Yeah, and that was Kendrick Wells from Arrogant Records. He had a big hand in that. Although I think they're one of the guys in the group, right, Clark. See, I could be getting this wrong, but if memory serves me correct, I think Clark Gable was a really great producer out of 5150. Yeah.
So you also had Closed Caption.
Yeah.
Who I thought were amazing.
I thought they were amazing as well. They were from Oakland. I thought that was a really great album, and we did 2 singles off that album that went to radio, college radio and big radio as well. And yeah, it never took off the way we hoped it would.
I know, and I just thought that was crazy because even like the first album, which I don't think did as well commercially, The Harvest, before they signed with Dogday, I thought that was great too, but I felt that one, Greens, really just nailed it, and I expected it to blow up.
Yeah, well, we didn't usually do 2 singles off of any album, so the fact that we did, we really believed in that album a lot. And I mean, you would know since you're in the Bay still, but if it's considered like a forgotten classic or like an underground classic of the era, I would be surprised if it wasn't, like the people, because they really had they were very clever lyrically, and then they also had, I feel like they had the hooks in their songs, and they weren't so gangster, and maybe with our first 2 albums we kind of had a reputation for being more gangster.
Right.
They were more like, thoughtful, like Souls of Mischief or Hyro.
Right, they were more on the hip-hop than the mob tip.
Yeah, but I thought they were really great. I have no idea if any of them continued, but hopefully.
And another, like, I mean, this is all like in the mid-90s, those like few years, like 95, 96, 97, it was like incredible stuff coming out. There was Cocaine Raps and also Raven in My Eyes from the artist formerly known as Dre Dog, but then with Dogday he switched it to Andre Nickatina, right?
Yeah, so I knew Dre from In-A-Minute, and he was getting off his deal with In-A-Minute, and he wanted to relaunch, basically, like start fresh, and so we basically launched his Andre Nickatina persona with Cocaine Raps, which we were a distributor for, so he'd already recorded it. We weren't involved in that, but we did that as kind of a teaser, like introducing Andre Nickatina, and then we did Raven in My Eyes, and we were more involved in that.
Right.
And I'm really proud of that album. I think it's a great album, and nobody else sounded like him, you know? Like really, when you think about it, like that gravelly delivery and
Right.
and that really sharp, like staccato way he would rap sometimes. Yeah, and he's going strong. I mean, how many years is that, Billy? It's a lot of years.
3 decades.
Yeah, so I mean that he can still, you know, I mean he's getting to an age where, I guess with hip hop you become a legend. So you're not just an old man up there. But he's touring and doing shows and making really good money and putting out like tons of records.
And unique projects too, like connecting with the symphony.
I know, which was amazing, right? Yeah. I mean, I love that about him. But I think he always was an innovator.
Right.
For sure. And those are the ones that lasted, you know? Like I think TC's still DJing and like producing, and I think he was an innovator. Like you think of, he created a sound, you know? And I think 11/5 were like that as well. I mean, they're very recognizable when you hear them, you know, it's them. And I think that's why they've lasted.
Yeah, Spill a Little on the Curb for Mano.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were so many others too. UNLV.
Yep.
They were down, and of course the connection with Coup is sort of inseparable
With
for
the
them.
NLP, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how many others were there on Dogday specifically?
Weren't we just talking about this where I couldn't remember like the whole discography?
But there's many. Like it's
lots, yeah.
in
a short amount of time, and I think like really, you know, there was a couple years when we were still kind of doing stuff, but really it was like 8 solid years. I'd say that we were putting out a lot of music. We did a lot. One might say in hindsight that we put out too many records because we were still like, you know, a 2-person team. Eventually we got a publicist, but he was mostly for the stray side of things, so like more of the hip-hop stuff. And we had an art designer, like a design guy, and he was with us from the beginning. That was Dan, who's still doing graphic design. I think he has his own t-shirt company, I think, in Oakland. And Todd Smith we worked with, but you know, it was me, Chris, and Dan in the office. And that was it. Yeah. So and we also did street promotion for Master P for No Limit. So we really built on street promotion and promotion to the mom and pop stores. That's how we built the company. So that was a lot of records. We always did college radio promo. So 12 inches singles promo for all our releases.
And people need to know too that doing college radio promo meant that you had to do special radio mixes, like edits for all of these records. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of work.
We always tried to give them. We weren't just giving them like an A side with like, you know, clean and a dirty version of like a single. We were also giving them B sides with like up to 4 songs on them. So like really packing them in, and we made and also our stuff didn't go out in like a plain sleeve. It was always like branded. So if it was a Dogday promo 12-inch, it was branded with the Dogday logo. And if it was a Stray Records, so that when the DJs got them, you know, you're building up that recognition, and they're excited when they're getting a record from you because they know your previous stuff, and it's, you know, creating that sound for the label.
And also with Dogday, I mean, just with compilations, there was the Killaho compilation, which was pretty much, you know, star-packed with so many great people on there. But also there was the $1 Million Dream double CD, double cassette compilation. That was Nick Peace produced, I think, right?
Right, that was Nick Peace.
And that was literally, like, when you go back and you look at the, like, long list of artists on there, it was a who's who of Bay Area rap from the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and with some really heavy hitters and some up-and-coming. And I have to give props to Chris, because Chris really orchestrated that whole thing. You know, I think by that point I was doing a lot of the Stray stuff and some of the FOAD stuff. And
I wanted to speak about that because people, they know Dogday, but sometimes they do know Stray and FOAD, but they don't realize that they're connected sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like Q's Hip Hop Shop, those 2 compilations, Stray from the Pack, the Coup, all these ones. So you want to break down what Stray and FOAD were?
Well, so I can't remember which came first, to tell you the truth. I'd have to look at like the dates on the back of the records. But the Coup actually came out on FOAD, which was going to be primarily like a punk label. It means fuck off and die. It was sort of our like political, like rebellious kind of revolutionary music. So it felt, I'm not sure if we had Stray yet, or we just decided that the Coup sort of had that like punk rock attitude. Like a lot of punks love the Coup because of their lyrics, and their songs are great as well. But so we had decided to put them on FOAD. Stray was like hip hop and electronic beat stuff, like all those DJ Q and the
Westside
and the DMT, the drum machine technicians. That was all Stray. Westside Chemical was Stray. So that was really the division. Like 11/5, Dogday really became like the sort of gangster, if you want to call it that, the more like real to the streets,
the mob street, yeah,
stuff. And I think if we'd had Stray, by the time we put out Closed Caption, we probably would have put them out on Stray, which maybe was why there was like some confusion about, like, because we had such a Hunters Point sound with Dogday up until them, and then this is an Oakland sound, and it's like a different thing, and maybe it did them a disservice.
Yeah. Maybe
to be on Dogday rather than on Stray. I'm not sure, but yeah. So yeah, I'd been doing a lot of gangster rap for like many years, and I loved it, but I think there was a point where it started to sound the same, and maybe I just lost my enthusiasm.
Right. And you famously did a cameo on one of the records.
So on 11/5, I'm the judge who sentences them to prison. I can't remember, life in prison or something. Not because of, it was just sort of funny.
Right.
And then at Killaho, I'm on the cover. I'm on the cover of the CD. I'm the white chick who's got the stop sign, and she's stabbing it into MC Killaho's foot, like fighting back a little bit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's so many others too that you guys put out. Darkroom Familia. Mm-hmm. Then there was Crooked Path, that one.
Yeah, Crooked Path from Seattle. That's Funk Daddy and J-Ski.
And who were the other ones you were talking about too? They were more sort of hip hop. The Mud Kids, was it?
Yeah, Mud Kids, and I can't remember where they were from. I think from the Midwest. They were great hip hop. Like a diverse group of MCs. And Young and the Restless, who were from Minneapolis, I believe. They were more like street rap, but really catchy stuff though. They had a great song called 3 in the Morning. You're making me have to remember things from a really long time ago, but I think that's, anyway, if I got the title of the song wrong, I'm sorry, but it was a great song. Yeah, we were really excited about them. Our aim, our goal was to like continue absolutely putting out like music that we thought was different and innovative and exciting, but it got really hard in the music industry, especially for independents. And it was a trickle-down thing. So what happened was, even though Napster gets blamed for this a lot, was that in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of corporate chains started carrying rap because there was so much money in it, right? That's what all the kids were buying. So like places like Walmart started carrying rap, but what that meant was that it forced labels to do clean versions of albums. Don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
So they had to do a whole other recording, right? They had to record an album twice, once with a clean, because they weren't just like beeping out, like some of them were just beeping out the curse words and stuff, but some of them were like actually rewriting the lyrics so that they were clean. So, and they were getting shipped like massive orders. So of course the labels like that at the beginning, these massive orders, but then their billing was like up to a year to pay, and they could return 100% of the records. And that's what started happening. They would order these big amounts, big quantities, and then not pay for like 365 days, and then return, they could return up to 100% of them. So it was like this big amount going out and this big amount coming in, and then the mom and pops like couldn't really compete with that, and the indie distributors couldn't match that, right? Like there's no way they're going to sell. So we were distributed by indies like Selecta Hits and ADA. They couldn't, there's no way they could wait a year for their money or get like a ton of records. So we started getting like a ton of records back, which you know, you can't sustain that when you're getting like for the first like 5-6 years of our operation, we hardly got any returns. Our records just sold through, and all of a sudden, you know, we're getting all these returns, and then the mom and pops couldn't compete with the pricing and all the rest of it, so they started going out of business. So like Selecta Hits, I don't know if they actually went out of business, but they got hurt really bad, and all those little indies and then all the little mom and pops all got hurt, and it just, when I said trickle down, it trickled down first and then it trickled up.
Yeah. So what year did Dogday officially cease existing as a business?
We didn't really ever cease, right?
So it's still a company.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we just decided we weren't gonna operate it anymore. And we actually released all the rights to the masters back to our artists.
Oh, you did, and I think that's an important thing because as a business, you very much were about sort of like a cooperative, really sharing with the artists, right?
Yeah, we did partnership deals, so
which was atypical for the music industry, correct?
Yeah. So the first, I think Closed Caption was also a royalty deal. The first 2 11/5 albums, Fiend and Ewanyola, were royalty deals, like the standard. But we actually had, I think our royalty was a little bit higher, and we also had breaks where it would raise. So like if they sold, you know, 10,000, then it went up to 12% or something, and if we sold like 50,000, it went up to 14% or something. So we had that built in. So that was already better than a traditional deal, which is usually 8% royalty is what they get. So it works out to basically the artist makes $1 a record. So we did that with the first 2 11/5s, and I think U.D.I. was also that, and maybe Closed Caption. But after that, we did profit split deals, which were 50-50 partnership deals with artists. So the profit was split 50-50, 50% to the artist, 50% to Dogday. But Dogday still paid to make the record.
Hence took the risk.
And took the risk. So if the record sold, it was great. Everybody made money. But if the record didn't sell, then and there was a loss, we took that loss 100%. That was the flaw in this beautiful way of doing business that we were trying to do, which was to make it fair, more equitable, and also like a partnership, because that's how we felt. We felt like we were partnering with people that we believed in to sell, to enable them to make a living from their art. That's what we were trying to do. And I come from a punk background, and I had punk labels before, and this was how we did it in the punk world, and it was really important to me because, you know, all the artists talk about like how the record industry is shady, but I actually believe that as well, that it was an unfair setup for the artist, and they kind of like, you know, blow your mind by giving you these big advances. But the thing about a big advance is you have to pay it back.
Right, it's really a loan.
You don't see any money until you've paid that back, and then your royalties kick in.
So you mentioned there about the punk years. I want to ask you too, before like Dogday Records, it's crazy that these two people set up a label based in Oakland, and it blows up with, you know, this group from San Francisco, 11/5, followed by, you know, just dozens more releases over the years.
Yeah.
But you didn't come out of nowhere, because before you and Chris worked at Music People, but you also had your punk background. So you wanted to like briefly overview your music history from the very beginning for you?
Yeah. So I lived in a punk squat, and there was a band there called A State of Mind, and they had like a little label called Mind Matter, and they mostly put out like pretty obscure, well, not obscure, but like for the masses, it was obscure. Within the punk scene, they were known. It was very political stuff that they were putting out. And at the time, I was seeing someone who started a band called Christ on Parade, and they were a hardcore punk band, very political as well. And they started getting popular, and they did their first record with Buckethead, who had his own record label. He's a well-known artist who has worked a lot with Metallica and a lot with Thrasher, sort of known for these like skull images. He's very successful. And he had a label called Pussmort. He did them. He did Corrosion of Conformity. He did an album with him. I can't remember who else he had. He had a lot. Probably his own stuff. Septic Death. He had his own band. And so so they did a first record with an EP with him, and then his relationship, other than with me, I knew him from Rough Trade when I worked at Rough Trade. He was good friends with the singer of Christ on Parade, but then the band like kicked the singer out, and the new band had like new material. Other guys were doing the singing, including my boyfriend at the time, and so I said, why don't you do a record with Mind Matter? And so that's how I got involved with Mind Matter. And we did a record with them, and because I worked at Rough Trade Records in San Francisco.
Retail store.
Yeah, well, it was a retail store in the front. It was on 6th and Mission. It was a retail store in the front, and it was a warehouse, like a distributor and a one-stop wholesaler in the back.
For the UK label, Rough Trade.
But also for like all factory record stuff,
Okay.
all mute stuff, so Depeche Mode, New Order, Joy Division, and all the punk stuff, including this, and also including the Smiths, who were friggin' huge. New Order, until Tone Looks Wild Thing came out, New Order was the biggest, Blue Monday was the biggest selling independent single ever, and then Tone Looks Wild Thing became like the biggest one. So we sold a load of those records. So because I worked at Rough Trade, I had a relationship with a distributor in Europe called Southern Studios. They were a studio, also a distributor. They did all of Crass's stuff. And because I had a relationship with the owner, John Loder, rest in peace, he agreed to take Christ on Parade's record to Europe. So he distributed it in Europe, Rough Trade distributed it in the United States, and it did really well. It was great. It was a great experience. Then I took a year off, and I left Rough Trade, and I wasn't involved with Mind Matter, and I took a year off and did some things. And then I came back to the Punk Squat, and I was like, I need a job. And someone said, I think there's like a music place like just across the street, basically just across San Pablo. I was like living on 36 between Adeline and San Pablo, and it was like I just crossed the street past the Lock and Key place, and there was this big brick building, and I went and knocked on the door and met Jason Blaine. And I had to go back like 3 times before he gave me a job, because he'd never hired a white woman to work in the warehouse before, and I wasn't applying for an office job. And he hired me to set up their CD department. CDs had just started coming out, and so that was my first job. And then I went from there to head of sales, and then I was head of A&R for In-A-Minute Records.
So you saw like Orbia, all the different, Totally Insane, all the different groups, Dre Dog come true on...
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was born out of we did a lot of consignment, so there were a lot of local indie artists, and we were a one-stop, a wholesaler to all the mom and pops in the Bay Area and beyond, and all these artists were making like their little tapes. And they would come in, and I would listen to them, and I would bring them in on consignment. And so a lot of the artists that ended up signing to In-A-Minute first came in on consignment.
So now when you look back on the In-A-Minute years, what do you think? Obviously you learned enough to start your own label with Chris, but what was sort of the main piece of knowledge that you gained from your time at Music People / In-A-Minute?
Well, no disrespect. No disrespect, but I wanted to, I really got to know the artists, and I wanted to do something different, than what In-A-Minute was doing.
So it kind of taught you what not to do.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I considered, I pretty much met everybody. Like, everybody came through. I had like a sincere like love and appreciation. Because I'm definitely all about like underdogs having a voice. So whether that's in punk or in rap or whatever, anywhere, and I loved it, and I found it exciting. And I worked with a bunch of guys from East Oakland who turned me on to like all this rap, and they loved everything, hip hop and the gangster stuff and everything. I mean, they were connoisseurs, and they turned me onto this stuff, and then I just happened to be. So I had the love for it, the appreciation for it, the respect for it, and everything. Even though I'm a white woman, I I respected the artists, so they came to me. I respected them. I was head of sales, so I like sold the crap out of their stuff, you know, which meant I got respect back. And I just wanted to get the music out to the world, but try to avoid like the aspects of the record industry that I didn't like.
Yeah.
So it was a very idealistic approach.
So for these artists, you were sort of the gateway to all of these record stores all over the country, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also had a very strong relationship with the indie retailers, like the mom and pop stores, like the owners of those stores, and always wanted to let them know like what the new hot thing was, you know, especially something local and indie that I knew they were going to sell a bunch of, you know. So it was like helping the artists as well. Obviously, it's helping music people. And then helping the record stores as well.
And that was like a whole wave of like businesses then, independent, a lot of African American owned, small, literally mom and pop record stores, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them were combo stores, which I always loved that. I always loved
what does that mean?
That it could be, I mean, a lot of times, of course, it was like a head shop, so they were selling like, you know, pipes and bongs and stuff. But sometimes it was like a barber shop and they sold music.
Okay.
And sometimes it was, you know, I loved it when it was like kind of a mix of things, you know, or they sold like, you know, clothing and they sold music. You know, there was a mix of that.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, and these stores were amazing how much they moved. You know, Creative Music Emporium, Sounds of Records, Jones and Harris. I mean, there were so many, just like really amazing stores. You know, for something that I accomplished, or just a fun situation. I mean, I'm very proud of the 11/5 albums. I'm very proud, and you know, we still have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with Tay and with TC and with Herm. I have a great relationship with Andre Nickatina. So I'm proud of those albums, you know. I think 11/5's those two albums were great. I think the first one was fantastic, and then I think they upped everything on the second one. There's some like, you know, Mano, who was actually probably the member that I clashed with the most. He was a headstrong, strong personality, but I loved it. He was the hardest, right? But he would sing and rap, and I just thought no one was doing that back then,
right.
Like Bone Thugs was doing like a singing thing, but no one was like singing and rapping, and the way he flowed like so seamlessly between the two, I thought it was amazing. I thought he was great. And rest in peace to him. We already said that. I'm very proud of Andre Nickatina's Raven in My Eyes. I thought that was an amazing album, and I'm very proud. I'm proud I did Azim's album. I'm endlessly proud that we did the Coup Steal This album. I was a huge fan of the Coup from early days at Music People. Boots would come in with his little demos, and I would sell them, and I have to say they didn't sell as well as the gangster stuff, because it's like thoughtful, you know, innovative, clever, lyrically, very conscious, political stuff. You know, he has never, I mean, it's amazing to me that he has never wavered from his principles. You know, if you've seen his movie or his TV show, he still sneaks that stuff in. I love it. I love it that he's like unapologetically, you know, like a revolutionary for the people. Like he's never going to change. You know, he's still gonna. It's all political commentary, but there's like a sense of humor in it, and it's you know, weird and wacky sometimes. So yeah, I'm very proud that we put out that record. I ended up re-releasing Christ on Parade, the original Mind Matter record that I'd put out like, I don't know, 10 years before, and re-released it with a couple of 7-inches that I'd also done with them. I'd done one of the 7-inches with them and one I hadn't. Yeah, that was pretty great, because that was a slice of, you know, like 11/5 being, you know, this new in 1994, like this new sound that was coming out of the Bay Area, out of Oakland and San Francisco. You know, it was kind of this rebirth, right? And same with Christ on Parade. When they originally came out, it was like Bay Area hardcore punk, and it was like a new thing as well, because before that it all being like LA got all the attention, you know. So yeah, so I feel like they're pivotal releases.
Another thing I think you should be proud of, and I give you major props for, is on top of all that was the newsletters that you put out.
Yes, I have.
Maybe you can, if you can hold them up. There was one during the Music People years and one during the Dogday years.
Yeah, these might be out of order now, but this was the first one, Volume 1, January of 1992.
Joe's rap sheet.
Yeah, Joe's rap sheet. This is what I did at Music People.
Right.
And
was that your idea, by the way?
It was my idea. And I actually started doing, when I first started doing it, I just typed up these lists and photocopied them at home.
So they were like a top 50 sellers, right?
Yeah, it was like a way to, it was really, I did it for the mom and pops so they would know, you know, all these like indie tapes.
Yeah.
Like what was really hot, like what we were selling a lot of.
Right.
So it's like a tip sheet for them. You see that in Rap Sheet it's got 3 E's. That was Jason's clever idea so that Rap Sheet, the magazine, wouldn't sue us.
The rap newspaper out of LA, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so I did it, and then, you know, it was effective because it was getting information out to the mom and pops who were kind of, you know, some of them were not really rap fans, and they were overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that was coming out. So this was like a way to help them.
And a guide as to what to order. Yeah,
and then Jason got more involved, so it got fancier. So I can't remember like how I guess it went until definitely 93, but maybe these are now out of order, Billy. This might have been the last one, so this is June of 94, volume 29, so you can see I did like at least 29 of them.
So then when you left Music People, it ceased.
I don't know if they kept it going, to tell you the truth. I mean, they could have kept it going and called it something. They just could have called it Jason's Rap Sheet. I don't know. But when we started Dogday, I did this one, Ms. Joe's Neighborhood.
Right. So this was a continuation, only you had more creative control.
Well, I had total creative control.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, this is all my stuff. This is all me.
Okay.
Jason just got, he got people to pay for advertising.
Right.
Because this went out to, this didn't only go out to the stores. I mean, it got pretty fancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I did, this one wasn't a good one to show you, but there's like a lot of like top 10s.
Right.
And then in some of them.
And always Bay Area included.
Always mostly, always local. So all the asterisks are all local. And then isn't there, I'm trying to read this upside down. Does that say down in our hood?
Right.
This is all local.
Right.
This is all local. So it's singles, maxi cassette singles. But I also started doing like a little column.
Oh, right. Kind of like a news update, right?
Yeah, like a news update. Because all the rappers talked to me all the time and told me
the dirt.
What was going on with them. Yeah, so that was all included in there. So not only did it go to all the mom and pops, but it went to all the A&R reps, like all the major like Jive and stuff. All the A&R reps that I knew at like all these labels, it went to them as well. So, and they used it to pick through and like, oh, Drew Down, that's
right.
Like doing really well for Music People. I should call Joe and like see what's up with that. And they called me about everything. And then it went to DJs as well. It went to like college radio and stuff. So the mailing list was huge. And because it was a mailing list that I built up, it came with me to Dogday Records as well. And I only did 4 of these because I was too busy. But the first one came out in October '94.
Right.
And we also...
You were too busy because you were running the new label Dogday.
Yeah. And, maybe I did 5 of these. I did 5 of these. So this was the first one, October of '94. And we did, like, sell ads, but, like, not really. We basically paid for this ourselves.
Right.
It was, like, a promotional thing that I wrote, on my own time. And I like this one better because I really did like, this is when I really started doing a column. So there's so much information in here. It's crazy. It really is like a time capsule.
Yeah,
of
I
what was
agree.
happening.
I agree. And the column is kind of a precursor to the more recent stage of your career, the latest stage, and that is you as an author.
Look at that. What a segue, Billy Jam.
So, so you want to talk about that and how you got into that initially, and you know, your successful career as an author of
Young adult.
YA.
Thrillers. Yeah.
Yeah. So
thrillers.
these are the books.
Yeah. These are 4 of my books. I've had published 6, and 2 of them are out of print. Published 6, and 2 of them are out of print. Yeah, but these 4 are still all in print. Well, I always wrote before I got involved in the music industry.
Sorry to interrupt, but didn't you do an issue of Comet Bus for Aaron Comet Bus too?
I did, yeah. We did. Oh, you've got that, so I can't show that. Yes, I did. Yeah, so that from my punk roots, I did a Comet Bus issue, 55 and a half. Was that it? Number 55 and a half, long-running punk zine that has been going for like over 30 years, and he's been a friend for 30 years. And but no, I always wrote when I was a kid. I started writing stories when I was really young, and that was always my means of expression, was writing. I wrote, you know, bad poetry, and then I started writing like short stories, and then I started writing novel-length things. But I put it on hold when I got involved in the music industry because music was like everything. I also played music a little bit, and I painted. Painting was like my outlet. But then when I had for my first child, I had some time and I started writing again. I joined a writing group, and I was first writing like memoir, and then I got this idea for this story. It was like a little novella.
Issue 55 and a half.
800, I think 800 copies only, limited edition, sold out. I have 1 copy left. And then this was my first book, came out in 2006, sort of a fantasy for slightly younger. And I started writing this in the writing group that I was in. And at first it was just a short story, and then I expanded it to like a novel. So that was the first book I ever wrote. And then this was the second book I wrote, and this sold. That
was your hit, right? That was like a big hit.
Yeah, it was a bestseller in the United States and in Canada, and it came out in Germany in German, and it was optioned for film, which didn't happen, which often happens with options. And this came out in 2011, and then I wrote some books that weren't published, and then this came out in 2018, 2019. This was nominated for the Governor General's Award, which is the big literary award in Canada. And this one came out in 2022, and this one won the Crime Writers of Canada Award. And so this is my latest book. So yeah, I love writing. It's how I express myself.
But that's a lot of work there, 6 whole books.
Yeah, and not including all the ones I wrote that didn't get published. So.
And to add to that, you also own or co-own a bookstore.
I do. I own a bookstore, Black Shop Books, here in Nova Scotia.
So, looking back on your life as an author, as a musician, an artist, record label owner, working in retail and management, dealing with people, A&R, so many different things. What would you say was the best thing for you?
Oh no, it's the thing I'm doing now.
Yeah.
It's the best thing. Yeah. No, I feel like, I mean, there's so much things I still want to do, you know, and things I haven't even thought of yet. Yeah. I mean, life is for trying things and succeeding or failing. It doesn't really matter, but.
Well, knowing your love of music and of sort of, you know, revolutionary type things, is that incorporated in your books?
Yes. Gently, though. It's more like social commentary, but yeah, I absolutely, the things that I hold important are definitely reflected in my books, yeah.
Last question. For your future, what would you ideally want to do for your future life?
I would like to be able to just write and not have to work in retail. Retail's hard. My kids are getting older now, and they're going to be leaving the house, and so that gives me some freedom to maybe live somewhere else or travel. I really want to travel. And the great thing about writing is I can do it anywhere. So, yeah, and I have a book out with publishers right now, and I'm working on 2 more. So I don't think I'm going to run out of ideas. My goal sort of is, I mean, I think I'm going to write for my whole life, but my goal is sort of to have 10 published books. I feel like if I have 10 published books, then I can say that I'm really a writer, you know, because there's always a little bit of fear of like, am I a writer or am I just playing at it, you know? But after 10, I feel like, yeah, I'm a writer.
Well, I think after just one published, you're definitely a writer.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So you want to do any shout-outs to anyone in your entire life that meant a lot to you?
Well, shout out to Billy Jam,
thank you.
who has been a friend and a peer for like too many years, and more years than I want to think of. Many times spent hanging out with you. Chris Graham, of course. All the groups I worked with, especially Tay, Herm, TC, Tony Jackson, if he's out there somewhere. Coup, rest in peace. He was a good friend. Baldhead Rick. E40 and the Click, Boots, DJ Pam, rest in peace, loved her. Yeah, I'm sure there's people I'm forgetting, but the Bay Area.
It ain't no joke.
Yeah.
Thank you.